20 of the most infamous, violent criminals in American history. Their crimes, capture and punishment. Each of their stories is a grim reminder of humanity's darker side, and the crimes they committed sent shivers through the nation. Their acts, their downfalls, and their punishments remain etched in the annals of American crime. 1. Ted Bundy, the charismatic killer. Ted Bundy lured young women to their deaths with charm and wit. Between 1974 and 1978, he confessed to killing over 30 women, often luring them by pretending to need help or posing as a law enforcement officer. Bundy's first arrest came in 1975 for a failed kidnapping. Escaping custody twice, he was finally apprehended in 1978 after a massive nationwide manhunt. Sentenced to death in Florida, Bundy was executed in the electric chair in 1989. His last words were eerily calm, and his crimes still chill those who study them. 2. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered and dismembered 17 men and boys, indulging in necrophilia and cannibalism. He preserved body parts as gruesome trophies. He was caught in 1991 when a potential victim escaped and flagged down police. The discovery of body parts in Dahmer's apartment left seasoned officers in shock. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 life terms in prison, but was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. His legacy remains one of depravity and horror. 3. John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. Gacy raped and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in the 1970s, burying many of his victims under his home. His guise as a children's clown at parties earned him his nickname. Gacy's downfall began with a missing teenager linked to him. A search warrant led to the discovery of remains in his crawl space. Gacy was convicted in 1980 and executed by lethal injection in 1994. His smug defiance in interviews added to his infamy. 4. Albert Fish, the Gray Man. A deranged cannibal and child murderer, Fish targeted young victims in the 1920s and 1930s. He claimed to have killed and eaten several children, leaving letters describing the acts. He was arrested after taunting a victim's family with a detailed confession. His crimes were so disturbing that even hardened detectives were horrified. Fish was executed in the electric chair in 1936. His chilling last words suggested he welcomed death. 5. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Ramirez terrorized California in the 1980s with a series of home invasions, murders, and sexual assaults, leaving satanic symbols at some crime scenes. He was caught in 1985 when a mob of angry citizens recognized him from a police sketch and restrained him until authorities arrived. Ramirez received 19 death sentences but died of cancer in 2013 while on death row. 6. Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Gein inspired horror films like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with his macabre collection of human remains, exhumed from graves or taken from his victims. Authorities discovered his gruesome trophies while investigating a missing woman in 1957. Gein was declared insane and confined to a mental institution until his death in 1984. 7. Aileen Wuornos, the female serial killer. Wuornos shot and killed 7 men between 1989 and 1990, claiming they had attempted to assault her. A series of mistakes led to her arrest in 1991, and her confessions sealed her fate. She was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Her life story remains a tragic tale of abuse, trauma, and violence. 8. David Berkowitz. The son of Sam. Berkowitz terrorized New York City in the 1970s, killing 6 and wounding others. He claimed a demonic dog commanded him to kill. Capture. A parking ticket near a crime scene led to his arrest. Berkowitz received 6 life sentences and remains incarcerated, now claiming to be a born-again Christian. 9. Gary Ridgway. The Green River Killer. Ridgway confessed to murdering 49 women, though authorities believe the number is higher. He targeted sex workers and runaways in Washington state. Advances in DNA technology linked him to his crimes in 2001. He received multiple life sentences without parole in exchange for his full confession. 10. Charles Manson. Cult leader of death. Manson orchestrated the infamous Tate LaBianca murders in 1969, carried out by his followers under his manipulation. His cult's activities unraveled after arrests for unrelated crimes. Manson received a death sentence, later commuted to life imprisonment. He died in 2017. 11. Henry Lee Lucas. The Drifter Killer. Lucas claimed to have killed hundreds, though only a handful were confirmed. His spree of murders, often with accomplice Otis Toole, spanned the 1970s and targeted random victims. Arrested for the murder of his mother, Lucas eventually confessed to other killings, weaving a tale of chaos and brutality. Sentenced to death, Lucas's sentence was commuted to life due to inconsistencies in his confessions. He died in prison in 2001. 12. Dennis Rader. The BTK Killer. Rader tormented Wichita, Kansas, for decades, binding, torturing, and killing 10 victims between 1974 and 1991 while taunting police and media with letters. His arrogance led to his downfall when he sent a floppy disk to the police in 2005, which they traced back to him. Rader received 10 life sentences without parole. His calm demeanor in court contrasted horrifyingly with the details of his crimes. 13. Earl Leonard Nelson. The Guerrilla Killer. During the 1920s, Nelson murdered over 20 women, often strangling them and leaving their bodies in grotesque positions. Authorities captured him after a witness recognized his face from widely distributed sketches. Nelson was hanged in 1928. His spree was one of the first to bring serial killers to national attention. 14. Edmund Kemper. The Co-ed Killer. Kemper targeted young women, killing and dismembering them in the 1970s. His horrifying acts extended to murdering his grandparents and his own mother. Kemper turned himself in, calmly confessing to his crimes and requesting the death penalty. Instead of death, he received 8 life sentences. Kemper remains in prison, known for his chilling intelligence and interviews. 15. Dean Call. The Candyman. Call, with accomplices David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley, tortured and murdered at least 28 teenage boys in Houston, Texas, during the early 1970s. Call was killed by Henley during an argument, leading to the discovery of their horrific crimes. Henley and Brooks were sentenced to life imprisonment for their roles. Call's death ended his reign of terror. 16. H. H. Holmes. The Murder Castle Architect. Holmes built a hotel in Chicago during the 1893 World's Fair, rigged with hidden chambers, gas chambers, and trapdoors to facilitate the murders of up to 200 victims. Arrested for insurance fraud, further investigation revealed the horrors of his murder castle. Holmes was hanged in 1896. His cold demeanor and meticulous planning make him one of America's earliest known serial killers. 17. Albert DeSalvo. The Boston Strangler. DeSalvo confessed to murdering 13 women in Boston during the early 1960s, strangling them in their homes. A botched burglary led to his arrest, and his confessions came during questioning. Sentenced to life in prison, DeSalvo was stabbed to death by another inmate in 1973. 18. Richard Kuklinski. The Iceman. A contract killer for the mob, Kuklinski claimed to have killed over 200 people, often freezing his victims to obscure the time of death. Undercover agents posing as potential clients recorded Kuklinski admitting to his crimes. He was sentenced to multiple life terms in 1988, dying in prison in 2006. 19. Samuel Little. America's most prolific killer. Little confessed to killing 93 women between 1970 and 2005, primarily targeting marginalized victims across the U.S. DNA evidence linked Little to several murders in 2012. He eventually confessed in chilling detail. Little received multiple life sentences and died in prison in 2020. 20. Andrew Cunanan. The Killer of Versace. Cunanan's killing spree in 1997 ended with the assassination of fashion designer Gianni Versace. His other murders were marked by personal vendettas and shocking brutality. Capture. After a nationwide manhunt, Cunanan was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound on a houseboat in Miami. His suicide robbed the public of answers to his motivations, leaving an eerie void in the case. These stories remind us of the depths of human depravity, the efforts of law enforcement, and the resilience of survivors and victims' families. Here's a haunting journey into some of the most chilling historical photographs ever taken, each carrying a story that lingers like a ghostly whisper in the corridors of time. These images serve as grim reminders of humanity's darkest hours and the horrifying truths of history. History photo number 1. The Elephant's Foot of Chernobyl 1986. The Elephant's Foot, a seething mass of radioactive material left behind by the Chernobyl disaster, is one of the most terrifying remnants of human error. This blob, a mix of nuclear fuel and molten reactor core, was so dangerous that even standing near it for seconds could result in radiation sickness and death. The photograph, captured using a remote-controlled camera, seems almost alive, its texture resembling petrified lava. Those who attempted to inspect it in person faced agonizing deaths, their bodies ravaged by radiation burns and organ failure. To this day, it's a symbol of mankind's hubris, a literal meltdown of our pursuit for energy. History photo number 2. The Execution of Nguyen Van Lem 1968. This photograph, snapped in a single harrowing second during the Vietnam War, encapsulates the raw brutality of conflict. General Nguyen Ngoc Loan executed Nguyen Van Lem, a suspected Viet Cong member, in broad daylight on a Saigon street. The stark juxtaposition of the executioner's steely resolve and the victim's agonizing grimace freezes the moment of death with unnerving clarity. It became an iconic anti-war image, but also a reminder of the moral ambiguities of war. Was the victim truly a dangerous insurgent, or merely a scapegoat? The haunting stillness of the frame speaks of lives violently disrupted, innocence lost, and justice discarded. History photo number 3. Jonestown Massacre Aftermath 1978. In the dense jungle of Guyana, Jim Jones' utopian experiment spiraled into horror. Over 900 followers of the People's Temple, many of them coerced, were found lying lifeless, poisoned by cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. The aerial photograph of their bodies arranged like discarded dolls in the dirt is both chilling and tragic. Among the victims were hundreds of children, their small forms mingled with adults, a silent testament to how manipulation and blind faith can lead to mass tragedy. The eerie quiet captured in the image seems to echo with unanswered questions. How could so many follow one man to their deaths? History photo number 4. The Omar bombing baby shoe 1998. The aftermath of the Omar bombing, one of the deadliest incidents of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, was captured in heartbreaking detail through a single, tiny shoe. This small, brightly colored shoe belonged to a child caught in the chaos of a car bomb detonated by the real IRA. Amid the wreckage of twisted metal and rubble, the shoe stands out, a poignant reminder of the young lives lost that day. The photo evokes a profound sense of grief, as it symbolizes the innocence destroyed by decades of sectarian violence and hatred. History photo number 5. The Black Dahlia 1947. Elizabeth Short, infamously known as the Black Dahlia, was found brutally murdered and dismembered in Los Angeles. The police photograph of her mutilated corpse lying in an empty lot is as grotesque as the crime itself. Her body was cut in half at the waist, drained of blood, and posed with her face slashed into a Glasgow smile. The details of her murder remain a mystery, and the eerie symmetry of her lifeless body in the photograph feels almost staged. As though her killer intended for the world to see his macabre handiwork. To this day, her story remains one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. History photo number 6. The Falling Man 2001. During the September 11th attacks, one photograph stood out among the chaos, a man falling head first from the North Tower. Dubbed the Falling Man, his body forms a disturbingly calm pose as he plummets toward the earth. The serenity of his form contrasts with the absolute terror of the moment, as the towers burned and thousands perished. Viewers of the photo wrestled with mixed emotions. Was he choosing his fate or forced into this horrifying descent by unbearable heat and smoke? The image encapsulates the horror and humanity of that tragic day, lingering as a symbol of unimaginable loss. History photo number 7. Omaira Sanchez's tragic death 1985. After the Nevado del Ruiz volcano erupted in Colombia, 13-year-old Omaira Sanchez became trapped under debris and water. Rescuers were unable to free her, and she spent 3 agonizing days in full view of cameras and journalists, slowly succumbing to hypothermia and gangrene. The photograph of Omaira, calm and smiling despite her impending death, is almost too painful to look at. Her composed demeanor as she talked to those around her, knowing she would die, leaves an indelible mark. Her story became a symbol of both human resilience and the failures of disaster response. Please subscribe. Click the thumbs up button to give us a like and leave a comment below the video. History photo number 8. Unit 731 Experiments. Unit 731, Japan's secretive biological warfare division during World War II, left behind photographs so horrifying they seem almost unreal. The images depict prisoners subjected to experiments that defy human decency, vivisections performed without anesthesia, exposure to deadly pathogens, and frostbite tests. The gaunt faces of the victims in these photographs are haunting, their eyes pleading for mercy that never came. Unit 731's atrocities are a grim reminder of the lengths humanity can go in the name of war and science. History photo number 9. H. H. Holmes Murder Castle 1890s. H. H. Holmes, America's first documented serial killer, constructed his murder castle in Chicago, a building designed for death. Photographs of the castle reveal trapdoors, soundproof rooms, and corridors leading to nowhere. Victims would be locked inside airtight chambers or dropped into acid pits, never to be seen again. The very architecture of the castle seems sinister, as though the walls themselves were in on the horror. Holmes' cold, calculated methods make his castle one of history's most macabre crime scenes. History photo number 10. The Children of the Holocaust. Among the many photographs documenting the Holocaust, images of children behind barbed wire stand out as the most heart-wrenching. Their hollow eyes and gaunt faces show the devastating effects of starvation, abuse, and the complete loss of innocence. These photos capture not just the physical destruction but the psychological torment inflicted on the youngest victims of the Nazi regime. Each child's face tells a unique story of suffering, a harrowing reminder of a past humanity must never forget. 11. The Mary Celeste 1872. The photograph of the Mary Celeste, an eerie ship found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean, continues to inspire theories and nightmares. When discovered, the ship was completely intact with no signs of struggle, yet the crew was missing. The personal belongings of the crew remained undisturbed, and provisions were plentiful, suggesting they left in a hurry or were taken under mysterious circumstances. To this day, no one knows what happened aboard the vessel. The photograph of the abandoned ship, bobbing silently on the waves, exudes an aura of ghostly solitude, as if the sea itself swallowed its crew in a fit of rage or vengeance. 12. The Hillsborough Disaster 1989. Photographs from the Hillsborough Stadium disaster depict fans pressed against metal barriers, their faces contorted in terror as they suffocated in the crush. The tragedy occurred during an overcrowded soccer match, leaving 97 dead and hundreds injured. The haunting image of young fans gasping for air, their bodies immobilized by the weight of the crowd, is a visceral reminder of how quickly joy can turn to horror. The faces captured in that moment are frozen in time, pleading for relief that never came, making this a grim portrait of human vulnerability amidst chaos. 13. Tsutomu Yamaguchi's Burns 1945. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was one of the few people to survive both atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Photographs of him, his body marred with burns and scars, tell a story of unimaginable suffering and resilience. His injuries, including keloid scars that twisted his skin into unnatural patterns, became physical testaments to the destructive power of nuclear weapons. The images show not just the pain he endured but the devastating legacy left on countless survivors of the bombings. Yamaguchi's quiet dignity despite his disfigurement serves as a chilling warning about the consequences of humanity's deadliest weapon. 14. The Last Jew in Vinnitsa 1941. This harrowing photograph captures the final moments of a Jewish man kneeling beside a mass grave in Vinnitsa, Ukraine, as a Nazi officer prepares to shoot him. Behind him lie the bodies of countless others who had already been executed. The man's posture, calm yet resigned, and the indifferent expression of the soldier ready to kill him embody the cold efficiency of genocide. The stark clarity of this image forces viewers to confront the horrors of the Holocaust, where millions were systematically exterminated. The emptiness in the victim's eyes mirrors the collective loss of humanity during one of history's darkest periods. Please subscribe. Click the thumbs up button to give us a like and leave a comment below the video. 15. The Tank Man 1989. The image of an anonymous man standing defiantly before a column of tanks during the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing is both chilling and inspiring. While the photograph doesn't show the bloodshed of the massacre, it captures the eerie calm of one man against overwhelming military force. Moments before and after, soldiers gunned down hundreds of unarmed protesters, their bodies left sprawled across the square. The man's defiant stance against impending violence became an enduring symbol of courage, but his fate remains unknown, adding a ghostly uncertainty to this powerful moment in history. 16. The Boston Marathon Bombing 2013. The image of blood-streaked streets and victims' personal belongings scattered after the Boston Marathon bombing freezes a moment of sheer panic and horror. One particularly haunting photograph shows a young boy's abandoned sneakers near shattered glass, a silent testament to the innocence and lives destroyed in the attack. The two homemade bombs claimed 3 lives and injured hundreds, many of whom lost limbs. The juxtaposition of a celebratory event turned into carnage is captured perfectly in these photographs, leaving viewers with a profound sense of vulnerability and sorrow. 17. The Ghost Boy of Auschwitz 1945. A photograph taken during the liberation of Auschwitz captures a young boy standing among survivors, his hollow eyes and gaunt frame a haunting image of what he endured. The boy, barely clinging to life, represents countless children whose lives were stolen by the Nazi regime. His skeletal appearance, blank stare, and frail posture tell a story of starvation, unimaginable suffering, and trauma. Even as soldiers freed the camp, the look on his face suggests that the ghosts of his experiences would haunt him forever. 18. Grigory Rasputin's Death Mask 1916. The death mask of Grigory Rasputin, the infamous mystic who served the Romanovs in Russia, is a macabre relic of his brutal assassination. Rasputin's enemies poisoned, shot, and ultimately drowned him in an icy river, but his death seemed as enigmatic as his life. Legends claim he fought to survive even after multiple attempts to kill him. The death mask's hollow eyes and distorted features seem almost alive, as if his spirit refuses to rest. The mask's eerie presence continues to fuel myths about Rasputin's alleged supernatural powers and the role he played in Russia's downfall. 19. Execution by guillotine 193. Public executions by guillotine, a symbol of the French Revolution's bloody fervor, were spectacles of death. One photograph from 1939, among the last public guillotine executions, shows the stark finality of the blade. The crowd surrounding the event appears disturbingly calm, as though death had become mundane. The eerie focus on the condemned man's neck, seconds before the blade falls, freezes the inevitability of death in a single frame. The guillotine, both a tool of justice and horror, became an icon of humanity's capacity for violence under the guise of order. 20. Skulls of the Cambodian Killing Fields 1975 to 1979. Photographs of the Cambodian killing fields, where over 1 million people were executed during Pol Pot's regime, are among the most horrifying images of genocide. Piles of human skulls, stacked in mass graves, bear silent witness to the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge. Each skull tells a story of a life cut short, their empty eye sockets staring back as if asking why the world allowed such horrors to unfold. The sheer scale of the bones is overwhelming, a grim reminder of humanity's darkest depths. The killing fields remain a chilling sight of remembrance and a warning to future generations. Each of these images reveals a terrifying aspect of history, forcing us to confront the depths of human suffering and cruelty. They stand as silent sentinels, reminding us of the past and urging us to ensure such horrors are never repeated.
To watch more videos like this, please visit my channel. Please support our channel. Please subscribe, comment below, and give a like. New videos are uploaded regularly.